Hello and welcome to the Brand Storytelling live streams for September 23rd, 2020. I'm Drew Parkhill. Thanks for being with us. These live streams air every Wednesday, and our mission is to deliver the most timely and relevant information for our community of brands and their storytelling partners. These shows are designed for you, so please let us know how we can best serve this community by suggesting future topics and guests that would help you now as well as into the future. You can drop me a line. I'm Drew at BrandStorytelling.tv. Happy to welcome back WarnerMedia. This is their first stream, and we're going to kick it off with a little sizzle reel.
You guys want to have fun?
Lights, camera, tape one, action.
I want to set the bar high.
Dude, this is awesome.
Have a look at the scale of the problem. Fantastic.
It's about humanity.
Chaos.
Let's give it up for...
My mouth is so dry right now, I can hear my tongue.
Swag it out too.
Mind blown, right? Let's do it!
Alrighty, well, I'd like to welcome our panelists to come out and turn on their cameras and join us. I'm going to hand it off to Carrie Flynn at CNN. She'll be our moderator today. Carrie, take it away.
Thank you so much, Drew, and for showing that video. And thank you everyone for joining us. I'm really looking forward to chatting with a bunch of creative leaders from across WarnerMedia's content studios who help brand partners tell the right story to the right audience at the right time. We're going to discuss some recent brand campaigns and how innovation, purpose-driven marketing, and diversity and inclusion have played a role in all of them. Also during this conversation, we'll be dropping links to materials related to those campaigns in the chat. You can see, I believe, on the right-hand side of your screen. And then also that chat is going to serve as a place where you can ask your own questions. So please do that. I'll be monitoring it during the conversation, and I would love to spotlight what you want to hear. So now I would love if the panelists could actually introduce themselves, and also please tell us beyond your title, like what you actually do, what your title means. So how about we start with Mikal?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Mikal Shapira, and I run what's called content partnerships for the news division of WarnerMedia. And that is essentially the marketing function on the ad sales side of the business. And I also oversee Courageous Studios, which is our in-house brand studio.
Seth?
Hello, everybody. I'm Seth Cole, and I lead a team called Brand Partnerships, very similar to McCall's Content Partnerships, at Turner Sports, which is part of WarnerMedia, and kind of anything from integrated marketing to branded content that we do on our linear properties or our digital or social properties, and some experiential as well.
Great. And how about next, Jennifer or Jen?
Sure. Hey, it's Jen Cohen. I head up content partnerships for our entertainment divisions. That's TBS, TNT, True TV, Adult Swim, and Cartoon Network, as well as oversee our brand studio for entertainment, Ignite Studios.
Great. And how about Beckley?
I lead Playmaker, which is Bleacher Report's in-house creative agency. So we handle all the branded content and content-based partnerships that we do with different brands. And we also function as sort of an in-house creative shop for our e-commerce team, some of our brand marketing, and help support in those ways also.
Great. And last but not least, Elaine.
Hi, I'm Elaine Andrade. I'm the Executive Creative Director of Fullscreen. We are a social-first digital entertainment company, and we help brands create better content on digital and social, all driven by talents.
Great, awesome. Well, Mikhail, let's actually start back with you. As you all know, 2020 has been quite the year. Multiple crises, from the pandemic to the economic fallout to the fight against racial injustices. And now the presidential election is what, less than 50 days away? I'm wondering, with a brand like CNN, how do you approach brand storytelling? And in particular, how do you help brands tell stories in the midst of issues like inequality?
Yeah. Well, first, I just want to thank Brand Storytelling. We have been part of this incredible community really since its inception. So we're just thrilled to be here with you all today. And yeah, to answer your question, we are definitely living in interesting times, to say the least. I don't know about you, but every day feels like uncharted territory. But honestly, when there's a lot happening around us, that's when Courageous is truly at its best. And we draft off the heritage of CNN and actually seek out what's culturally relevant at any moment in time. And then we figure out how to tell a brand story within that context and that backdrop in the most authentic way. So said differently, we don't shy away from tough topics, quite the opposite. We actually invite them in. And in the past, we've tackled issues like gender inequality and pay gap, immigration, physical disability, racial bias and inequality, as you mentioned, to name a few. And P&G is one company who's really recognized and taken full advantage of our strength and purpose-driven work, particularly around the LGBTQ community. And Brent Miller over there has been one of our best partners, and we've been working with them really for several years now. And what's interesting is that they've chosen to take a really unique approach with an introspective look at their own history with the LGBTQ community. And that story has not always been flattering for the brand, to be honest. It's a really brave story to tell, and they've trusted us to tell it. So the first year, we released a film called The Words Matter. And that was about the internal battle that employees fought to add sexual orientation to the company's equal employment opportunity statement of diversity. And we won a Cannes Lion for that one. And then the second year, we continued the story with Out of the Shadows. And then this year, we rounded out the trilogy with a look at how P&G has portrayed the LGBTQ community in their own advertising. And again, done through a very critical lens. So this film is called They Will See You. And it takes a look at just how important it is for LGBTQ individuals to see themselves represented in advertising and the responsibility that brands have for that representation to be a positive one. So there's a really touching moment actually in the film where a mother is talking to her transgender son about watching a P&G Gillette commercial where a father and his transgender son, he's teaching him how to shave for the very first time. So listen, like, you don't have to be part of the LGBTQ community to emotionally connect to that kind of content. And that's what makes it so powerful, so memorable, and so effective. So I also want to mention all of these P&G films were long form. This third one is actually 14 minutes in length, and we had almost 45% completion rate. And on average, viewers watched over 8 minutes of the film. So it just goes to show you that consumers will watch long form branded content when it's done well.
Yeah, no, that sounds really, it's like ambitious and you think risky these days to invest so much into producing that, so much time and coordination. And so I guess speaking of, obviously these times are different when it comes to production. So with COVID, I imagine you haven't been able to do as much production as usual in field as before. Can you talk to me about that? Is that true? And kind of how are you managing that during this time?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. You know, like all production studios, we've had to make adjustments, but you know, we're well equipped, we're nimble. That's actually allowed us to adapt very quickly and sustain these high level of standards that we hold ourselves to in our storytelling. Actually, since COVID hit, we've been extremely busy. We produced over 30 COVID response assets for AT&T, and we've told timely and relevant stories for many other brands. So for example, we produced content for Papa John's about how different the high school graduation experience was for high school seniors this past year. And then Pfizer for their work on COVID-19 vaccine development. And then for Target, we told such a great story about the Dad Gang, which is a group that really celebrates Black fatherhood and aims to dispel negative stereotypes. So I personally think we've done some of our best work during COVID. It's certainly very different from how we operated before, but in some ways it's built new creative muscle that I think we're going to be able to flex even after we revert back, and that's going to make our work even stronger in the long run. And to be clear, nothing we're doing from a remote production standpoint is just like a straight Zoom video. We go really deep on pre-production. We use a variety of sophisticated remote production techniques. We set up video villages so that we can direct a shoot from afar. And we heavy up in post to make it even more dynamic through graphics and special effects and animation. And yeah, all of this under expedited timelines like we've never seen before. And so suffice it to say, we've learned a ton, but now we're easing back into the field. We are. It's slowly, cautiously, and most importantly, just making sure that you know, the safety of and health of our crews is our top priority.
Well, it's great to hear like what you say, and it gives me hope that like you're producing so much more. It's not like things had to like cut back from time in the beginning at all. Great. Well, Seth, I want to chat with you. There's actually one big, I guess, it was arguably, I don't know if it's true, but one of the big first like live sports events during COVID. After everything shut down, we didn't see the end of all sports because you and your team put together what I believe was called, it was the Match 2.0. I know I watched because I saw Tom Brady was being a part of it. And let's just say I may or may not have been a Patriots fan. So I guess my love of him has changed. But anyway, it was a great and special like thing. He had an incredible shot. He might have ripped his pants. Anyway, it was good television. So talk to me about how the production was different, and also wondering too, like during this time and the fact that, you know, the production obviously was different in many ways, how did your team, you know, talk with partners about being a part of it? Was it different than usual to kind of integrate them into the experience with brands? I believe Capital One was the main sponsor for that.
Yeah, it was definitely one I won't forget. You know, on March 11th, obviously when the NBA season went on hiatus, and all of a sudden 3 days later, March Madness is canceled. You know, two of our biggest properties at Turner Sports. I went from kind of twiddling my thumbs there for a minute, trying to figure out what we were going to do. And luckily, you know, we had already started talking in the late part of last year with doing another match. So this was our second version of it. So the first one was Tiger Woods versus Phil Mickelson. And then the second one, we were trying to think of a unique spin on it. So we added Tom Brady and Peyton Manning. So we already had all four guys kind of engaged into the idea. And we were planning for it around June. So we did site visits. We were going to do it in Ohio. And then all of a sudden with COVID, you know, we really wanted to be out there to give fans something to watch, something that was live, something that that's relevant, that is entertainment versus, you know, I love CNN, but, you know, we were watching it 24/7 at that point, and we needed to give them something else. So we leaned in on it. We talked to all four guys, and obviously they're probably the four hardest people to schedule around. They were all wide open, obviously with no PGA Tour, no football. Tom actually had just moved to Florida, not far from Tiger. So we were able to get all four guys involved, and we could show that we could do it in a safe way. I mean, we did it with probably half the staff of a normal golf telecast. We did it in Florida, and we had a lot of news and a lot of firsts to figure out for that event, but it was nice that we could pull it off. I think what was unique about it is all four guys were really engaged, and we knew we had to make it more about giving back. So we called it Champions for Charity. And it wasn't, you know, we didn't want to have people watch four incredibly rich people play for more money. So all four guys gave every dollar that they were originally agreed to COVID relief. We worked with the All In Challenge, which was ran by Michael Rubin and Fanatics. And we raised over $20 million during a 5-hour telecast. And it was the most watched golf telecast in cable history. We broke some great records. I think we're 51 million views on Bleacher Report, which Beckley can get into, on all the different social platforms that we have. but I think the $20 million piece was the most impressive. And it was pouring rain, so that even added some more challenges to it. But we worked with Capital One. We actually had some great partners. Every single one of them leaned in on making sure that whatever they did had some tie into charity. So Capital One made some donations. Michelob Ultra also did a ton on social around it. We had 4 of the top 5 trending topics on Twitter, and they were all related to the match that day. We had different folks like Russell Wilson with Wheels Up, who came in and gave 100,000 meals for everybody that made it on the green at a par 3. So it was a pretty special day. And I think each one of our partners knew that, they had to lean in on and making a difference. So it was a fun event.
Awesome. Well, no offense taken that you say you need a break from watching CNN. It was a wonderful watch for me personally. So awesome. And I'm looking forward to hopefully more of that in the future. And I see Olivia dropped some kind of, material on that in the chat. So speaking of big live events, we had the Match 2.0. We also had WarnerMedia just hosted something called DC Fandom, which I know I was busy that day and didn't watch, but I know a lot of my friends were a part of that. Friends a part of who love the DC community. And I saw a lot of action and buzz about it online. So Jen, tell us about that event and also any insights you learned about what works when translating major events to being virtual experiences. So obviously with Seth's event, it was actually small, controlled in person, but DC Fandom was created to something whole virtual online. And I would love to learn about kind of how that's possible and what marketers can know about to make successful virtual experiences.
Yeah, no problem. Well, it was amazing to be a part of. Warner Brothers put on the DC Fandom events, and they were over the course of 24 hours, over the course of 2 weekends, and we were able to partner with State Farm and General Motors. Credit where credit is due. Warner Brothers did an insane job of creating this universe, this virtual universe for all DC fans to come and basically get their fix. If you attended, you saw it was just spectacular from start to finish. The second weekend really involved a lot of fan participation and very custom events for fans to participate in. And in that weekend, we partnered with General Motors, which was launching their new car, the Trailblazer, for their launch. And they wanted to get the word out. And we wanted to do it in a big way with them, and that was with the DC catalog. So what we did is you could customize your own Trailblazer within the experience, and using various DC IP, so Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Suicide Squad. You got to pick and choose and basically customize a Trailblazer and then share it with friends. We worked with them with Ignite Studios because it's great for 24 hours. You can go in, you can share that experience, but then when it's over, it's over. So Greg Gordon, who is the creative director for Ignite, and his team did an amazing job, and they actually created a custom Batman Trailblazer that was able to go out into the real world, not for sale legally, I have to say that. But then we were able to, there's Batman Day that just happened this past weekend. So we were able to distribute that on Batman Day. Again, the virtual question that you just asked, it's a lot. It's a lot. It's very different. It's a big undertaking, but for as many new challenges as we have, the possibilities and that we could incorporate in real life, we would only have been able to probably do one of the 5 custom things that we did. Being able to customize a Trailblazer just in and of itself, the amount of assets to customize, have the choice of customizing 5, you had over 1,000 kind of options that you could choose from. So it's 1,000 assets that you have to create in order to, figure out if I want to make a Wonder Woman with 3 different designs. So there's a lot. GM was an amazing partner on that, and I think the results really showed. But again, virtual versus in real life, the possibilities can be endless. So it's almost like, okay, we just have to focus and dive into exactly what you're looking to achieve, because it's a lot easier to get off the path that you're originally headed down.
No, that's a great point. That opportunities seem so like limitless, and I'm sad to know that I can't actually get my own Batman Trailblazer, because that sounds awesome. But maybe in the future, keep me updated.
Okay.
So Beckley, I'd love to go to you. So we just talked about virtual events, and I guess Seth, there were some in-person events, and when I think about events happening in person, my mind goes straight to the NBA season happening right now. So some sports are still happening. So Bleacher Report, which are a part of, it sits at the amazing nexus, I guess I'm biased here, of sports and culture, with like social media at the very core of it. So walk me through kind of how that like environment of Bleacher has given you and your brand partnerships a different vantage point in the last few months, and really how recently have you been approaching what Bleacher's known for, this really talent-driven creative?
Sure. Well, I would talk to friends since March, and the sports world shut down. And they kind of joking like, "So you just sitting around? You doing anything?" And it's like, "Yeah, we're doing a lot," because as big as the live event is, and how meaningful that is to our company and our content, you're right. We really try to approach sport as sort of a center of gravity in youth culture, and politics, art, fashion, music. It's all connected. And I think we've really seen that over the last 6 months, writ large, with the NBA coming back, the leadership that the league has shown in testing procedures and being able to bring something like that back, working so diligently with the Turner Sports team to figure out how to produce that. And also, with the boycott and with the very public fight for racial justice, it's been an interesting and fraught environment to bring brands into and to bring athletes into, because while a lot of athletes have had more time and have maybe been a little bit more available than they normally would be, they're also really careful that they don't want to misstep. They don't want to look like they're saying the wrong thing at the wrong time. Just today, with knowing that the Breonna Taylor grand jury decision was going to come out today, we pushed a campaign that was going to launch today a day later, because we know that for the brand, for that athlete, it's not the right time, it's not the right environment to bring their story into. And so what we're constantly trying to do is figure out, in the kind of shape-shifting world of social media, how can we hook this content and this story in a way that's appropriate, relevant, going to be fun, and going to resonate with our audience. And so that's been a really big part of our talent outreach, the way that we've developed those relationships over years leading into this, where we have a sense of trust with the athletes and their management, that they're in good hands when they put their brand in our hands as well. And it's led to some really fun content, but it's been a time when you just have to have all hands on deck, ready to move at a moment's notice if you need to re-edit, if you need to hold something, if you need to push to get it out because something, this player just had a huge game and we want to get this content out around him earlier. All those things have really been in play.
Right. Well, it's good. Like, I'm glad to hear, like you said, like you see the players, the talent are in very safe hands with you guys, very awareness driven. Well, Elaine, I'd love to move to you now and talk about with your work in Fullscreen. Fullscreen's also known to be so embedded in social influencer digital culture these days. I know one recent partnership is between AT&T and the Trevor Project, a great brand that I would love to hear you talk more about. Can you describe that partnership and how it came to be?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the AT&T and Trevor Project is one of those cases where you just see how explosively effective purpose marketing can be when you put it in the hands of digital influencers. And we know that with purpose, what you are doing is as important, if not more, as what you were saying. In this case, for AT&T, they were actually enabling 24/7 text and chat services for the Trevor Project, which is huge and really authentic to their mission too. So for those who aren't familiar, the Trevor Project is the world's largest suicide prevention and crisis intervention organization, created specifically for LGBTQ plus people under 25. And this is a group at exceptionally high risk. They are actually 4 times more likely to die by suicide. So when you are facing sobering statistics like that, it shows you how brand building can really impact public health and do public good as well. So for the launch of that 24/7 text chat, we knew we needed to create awareness, but also ultimately a kind of direct response. And we were going to need emotion, and we would need to wield it with a kind of precision. And in that case, audience insights are super critical. For example, we saw that the value 24/7 text chat could bring to specifically the trans youth, since they're so often misgendered by phone, and that can be triggering. We saw the need in the insights for diversity, being careful not to homogenize the segment as a whole. We also saw the places where we could intercept audiences in social who needed that content and who were searching for it. So we identified influencers from those communities, not just influential faces and names, but storytellers that have really deep human relationships with their audiences, so that when you see creators like Miles McKenna, who's trans, or Kaylin Allen, who is Black, alongside Tyler Oakley, all sharing these real and deeply personal stories of traumas where they experienced needing the kind of support that text chat service could provide, you sit with that, as an audience, and those stories sit with you, they stay with you, and they leave you knowing that if you are in a moment of crisis, that you are not alone. You understand now what support is and how to get it. And if you weren't in a moment of crisis, those stories still fill you with empathy, and you understand immediately why Trevor Text and Trevor Chat really matter so much. So I will say, regardless of where your lies, if you want the story of your values to impact real lives, one proven way that you can do that is by enabling storytellers from those communities that need that enablement, communities for whom the spotlight really matters. It is an act of allyship to do that, and it makes your messages more authentic by nature. It also delivers results. So after reaching 17 million people, we saw 5 times the response to the hotline. We also saw a pretty radical uptick in positive sentiment for the brand across Gen Z audiences. So that sentiment went up by 700%. My point then is just to say, when you are choiceful with your storytellers, you are already halfway there. We know your partnerships are more than spends, they are purposeful choices, and they can be behaviors in and of themselves. And I think for AT&T, that was ultimately what made it work so well.
Awesome. Well, no, I'm glad you brought that up, this idea of being authentic, because I feel like, and especially during this time, we heard about having to push things and hold things because, brand campaigns can come off a little awkwardly sometimes. And so just speaking to just generally about purpose-driven marketing. So with working with the Trevor Project, are there any other tips you would provide to marketers on beyond, I guess you mentioned using people, but working with people in the right communities to bring these messages across? Anything else you'd add about how you can ensure that brands come off as authentic?
Yeah, authenticity is critical. There's so much skepticism everywhere, and I think that the antidote for that is often the earnestness. And it is just such an important time to be a good human that is working towards that. And you see the incredible work that is undertaken on the brand side. These are individuals that are pushing these initiatives forward to support this kind of marketing. And I always think if people only knew how deeply and personally committed some of these brand stakeholders were, any skeptics would really just want to help. But the reality is that a brand is only as credible as its last action. In fact, one of the creative directors on my team is the daughter of engineers who worked at AT&T for decades, starting in the 70s. And by that time, the company was already one of the first to prohibit discrimination against employees based on sexual orientation. So it was very eye-opening for them. And they saw how safe and confident that kind of corporate policy could make people feel. how it kind of opened everyone up on all sides of the communities to these new, like, life-affirming networks of friends and colleagues. So for her parents, you know, their sense of how to strive for allyship really started there at AT&T in 1975. And all of that is to say, even if you have been doing that work since then, you have to keep going. That is the expectation today. And it's not wrong. It's more important than ever to stay the course, especially as we're about to kick off a whole new decade. So much is going on. Brands have to continually find new ways to be there for humans over time. And I think one really effective way is by creating relationships through influential humans who have that credibility, but who also have a real and true and rich bond with their audience, one that provides value to that audience. And I think it's providing value as a brand that's probably the opposite of just showing up for pride, right? And I think that's why when audiences see a trans figure like Miles or a Black creator like Kaylin, what they also see is the choice to create representation for the underserved, so that, you know, regardless of what the conversation becomes at any moment, a brand can be authentic just by bringing the right cultural influencers to the table. The last thing I'll say is that I think it does deepen the impact to be always on. I think that is one other difference between like a real rainbow and a wash, right? I know that for a lot of brand managers, you know, certainly the ones behind this initiative, the purpose is a life's work. And I learned so much from that. Like, being authentic for them means being vulnerable to scrutiny and to be able to confront what it is telling us about ourselves, whether we're individuals or we are the brand, and not just to dabble in the trends, but to think really more fundamentally about the legacy that you build over time. So when you use purpose to build a bridge between brands and humans, it is the humans on both sides that are going to make it authentic every step of the way.
Great. That was awesome advice. And I'm sorry to like stick with you for so long, but I'm looking at the questions in the chat, and there's actually one that's like perfectly related to this conversation, but really, rest of panelists, feel free to jump in. There's a question from Mark Patterson about influencer marketing. And he says, with a lot of brands gravitating towards larger influencers, I'm wondering if, you know, you, Elaine, but also everyone else, feel free to jump in, if you're working with any like what are called like micro influencers, so smaller influencers with smaller audiences, and if so, how are those relationships different, I guess, if at all?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that there's a tier system that plays into and becomes a strategy that always needs to be kind of tailored for what it is that you're trying to achieve. And in cases where you are trying to reach, you know, more real people and less messages, like, again, like enabling micro influencers can be part of the behavior that you're trying to achieve, less than creating a message. I think that when you're working at a higher tier of influence, you're able to take advantage and leverage like their storytelling abilities, their recognition, their relationships, and their audience to be a little bit broader in scale. But I think what's really amazing is the ability in working in that world to be able to go up and down the tiers of influence and be able to achieve whatever it is you need for any given moment. So I think that, you know, when it comes to micro influencers, you know, you're not necessarily going to see the scale of impact, but you will be able to like scale the behavior through working with them. So there's a lot of value to that.
That's great. Well, it's awesome. Does anyone else have anything out there? I guess maybe Beckley, because you work with obviously talent all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, we don't necessarily think of them as influencers in sort of a traditional sense where they're building their own content platforms. But I think what we've seen is that you'd be surprised the athletes that really resonate with different pockets or different age groups, especially. I mean, for us, we're tracking the performance of every post and every comment on every athlete that goes out there. And what that allows us to do is, you know, look at someone like Donovan Mitchell 3 years ago, who was really popping for our audience. His highlights were going crazy. He didn't have a single endorsement really going at the time. He's playing in Utah, but his performance on our platform is equal to LeBron James, who is more likely to buy your company than you get him to be in your messaging. And so for us, what we're really trying to do is connect at that level of the young athlete who is, one, probably following us, probably commenting on our posts, and making it feel like they're a part of the community, giving them the camera, letting them film themselves, do what they're doing. And that kind of authenticity and sort of inclusiveness, I think, really connects with them. And it's fun when you land that right person who is just sort of starting to pop and has such a bright career ahead of him or her, and you see people in the comments thrilled to see them working with a brand, thrilled to see that Gillette or Tissot or Wilson is working with this athlete, because it shows you that they're really rooting for that person and they want to see brands get on board with what they're all about.
That's so interesting. I'd love to hear, like, you get the like concern of the opposite side of it, that when, certain influencers or just people in general work with brands that, like we talked before, inauthentic. What you're saying, it's like other times it's just seen as like a great like milestone. It's something to celebrate. That's awesome. Well, I love the same question, same person, Mark. Great questions today, Mark. Thank you. He asked, with social consciousness permeating news, sports, live experiences, brands, how do your teams collaborate on projects, and how do you determine which team takes the lead? That's really interesting. Obviously, today we have a bunch of people from WarnerMedia, one happy family. So I don't know if anyone has any like insight there on kind of like not working together on campaigns.
I'd say it's always a moving target, right? And it really depends on where we are at any given time. So there are so many different permutations that we're able to put together because we cover such a great range of not only IP, but the audiences and the categories. And I think when you pull those things together in different combinations, it can do really powerful things depending on the category that the brand is in. So I wouldn't say that there's necessarily like a methodology to it. Like everything is very tailored and bespoke by the time we start talking about how to come together for these. But certainly I think that it's a really robust and kind of powerful way to create a lot of impact with a single initiative.
Yeah, the only thing I'll tack on is I think we all work well together, and I think when we do work on a collaborative pitch, we tend to we all get the sense of who it probably makes sense for and who can tell that story the best. I think we all know if it's sports, young millennial, like Beckley's going to knock it out of the park. If it's more comedic, it's Jen. If it's more, hard news storytelling and more documentary style and deeper, it's courageous with McCall. Like I think, and Elaine's team with some of the other projects we've been working on. But I think we all read the request and we all kind of in our gut know who probably makes the most sense. And I don't think any of us have skin in the game to say it has to be this or it has to be that. I think we all work well as, a common goal.
Great. Well, like I said, one big happy family, very supportive and collaborative. Also, well, we have another question that perhaps would be good for Jen, because it gets back to what we talked about in-person events being on hold, but working on awesome virtual experiences. So someone asked, are people at brands in charge of experiential marketing coming on board and looking for live stream creative solutions and opportunities? So Jen, maybe if you want to like kind of highlight for DC Fandom, any other particular like kind of brand experiences that you saw brands like approaching you and being really game to do these virtual experiences.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it was a bummer. I mean, I think we all know it's a bummer, Comic-Con being gone this year. I think all of us, had live events that were squashed, that we had brands a part of. I'll say that, the company as a whole has done a great job with streaming, has done a great job with trying to come up with events and trying to, come up with exciting ways to incorporate brands. I work a lot on Conan, and Team Coco has been doing live comedy shows, streaming those with Team Coco comedians. That's something that brands have approached us with. It's definitely something brands are interested in. I think the challenge and what we're all really good at is making sure that it's not a one and done. So there's something that, your brand is a part of leading up to for the event, and then making sure that it lives on post that event, and then it can even roll into the next one. So it is something that brands are approaching us with, and between all of us, there are many solutions that we have come up with.
Right. I love to hear the fact that you're, with brand relationships, you're talking about not one and done, these long-term relationships. And speaking of, I mentioned to you before, I know there's one campaign that you highlighted to me before that was working with Bud Light. I'm a super fan of Bud Light seltzers. So beyond that, I would love to hear more about this campaign, if you don't mind sharing.
Well, then you're in luck. Because it was Bud Light Seltzer was one of the brands that we did work on. So they came to us April, May, So if you can remember way back then, it was pretty much the beginning of all of this new world that we're living in. And no sports were on, no cultural moments in terms of concerts or festivals or public gatherings were happening. Bars were closed, restaurants were closed. The one thing that didn't change is that people really dig drinking, and they wanted to continue to do that, but needed a way to have the alcohol ported into their home. And Bud Light had a solution for that with delivery, obviously. They also, again, we were all glued to the news, but people were starting to get fatigued from just seeing that 24 hours, and we're looking for a little bit of an escape and some laughs. And they also do play towards that comedy market quite a bit. So the creatives over at TBS had come up in record time with a competition bracket style comedy competition. In 3 to 4 weeks from ideation to execution, Ignite Studios was able to create original franchise that went along with Tournament of Laughs. Because of the challenges of production and COVID, you started out with 32 comedians all shooting themselves from their homes in 32 different locations. It's very challenging to try and get product there for talent, not only, locations. So, and then each week you dwindled down to crown a winner. So it was a lot of challenges. So what we came up with was an original franchise called the Bud Light Comic, and we cast Yadoya Travis, a great up and coming comedian, to be that face for us. And there were weekly original franchises that aired within the show on linear, through digital, and then through our social handles. And we also created white label content that Bud Light could have. We worked with the show with talent for the winner announcement, and then a custom UGC component as well. The campaign it turned out so great that we extended the franchise with Bud Light through the end of the year. And we're going to do Bud Light comics with a new diverse array of comics that will hit all of their holiday timelines from Labor Day to New Year's Eve. So again, it's just keeping an eye open to scale, not just the one and done, really coming up with ideas that relate to the project at hand, but also with the hope and thought and the creativity to allow those to extend way past the actual show.
Great. That's awesome. I'm looking forward to those holiday campaigns. So I guess, I don't know, I'll stick to drinking the seltzer all year round. Awesome. Well, I know we're running out of time here. So I guess before we wrap, I feel like, Mikhail, I didn't let you speak enough. Is there any other I'm sorry to put you on the spot. Is there any other words of wisdom you would want to end this conversation with? I know you started at the beginning talking about how positive this time actually has been for the brand. The fact that you've done so many more campaigns, I guess than expected. Anything else you'd share on about kind of what's ahead for you and your team?
Yeah, I mean, I think the name of the game is being flexible, being nimble, just assuming that we are going to continue to be in unpredictable times, and that there's just going to be curveballs thrown at us constantly, and we're going to have to just adjust and adapt and keep going. And so I think, if you kind of, change your mindset to expect that, then I think you'll be more prepared. And when I say that, I don't just mean from a work standpoint. I think also from a mental standpoint. I think it's important, to manage teams through this time period, and then relationships with your partners, with brands through this time period, because we're all struggling together. We're all kind of holding hands through this together. So I think the three things we were able to do really well through COVID that is, something I want to hold on to, and I want to make sure that we continue to do is, to flex creatively when we need to be able to deliver quickly when we need to, and then to maintain an authentic voice that just resonates. So continuously have this pulse on what's happening in society and all around us, in our country, in our world. And so to be able to do this work in a way that, you know, is going to strike a chord with people and feel authentic. I feel like authenticity is kind of the word of the day. So those would be just my thoughts, my top line thoughts.
Yeah, no, that's great. You three like good pieces of advice to follow. That's awesome. Great. Well, thank you all so much for joining us, and thank you obviously so much to our panelists and to Brand Storytelling. If the viewers have any questions and want to work obviously with these incredible studios, Mike, Drew, Rick, the whole Brand Storytelling team knows where to find us and how to reach us. So please do reach out to them. And again, thank you all for being here today. Really appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Carrie.
Thanks, Carrie. Thanks so much. And if you're just joining us, or if you happen to miss a portion of this stream, we will publish tomorrow on YouTube. You can go to BrandStorytelling.tv/streams to check out all of our previous streams. Thanks so much, Carrie, for hosting this. And thank you everyone at WarnerMedia and Turner Sports and Playmaker and Fullscreen. Really appreciate it. Take care. Be well.